entitled Using Remote Sensing and Machine Learning to Improve County-Level Corn Yield Predictions in the U.S. Corn Belt. So this is my graduate committee. The chair of my doctoral committee and my advisor is Dr. Dapeng Lee. He's assistant professor here at Department of Geography and the Environment at UA. My committee members from University of Alabama are Dr. Hongxing Liu and Dr. Lia Mungai. And my external committee members are Dr. Hank Kui Zhang and Dr. Metniazi Motan from South Dakota State University. So this is the outline of my presentation. The first chapter introduction, which introduced the topic and the overall details of the topic. In chapter 2, I'll be introducing the geographically weighted random forest model for county level corn yield predictions. And then in chapter 3, I'll be discussing the usage of grass primary production data and deep transfer learning for county level corn and soybean yield prediction. In chapter 4, we will discuss the use of open source GIS technologies and machine learning model deployment to predict county level corn and soybean yields. And finally, in chapter 5, we'll conclude this dissertation with some limitations and the future work. So some background, corn and soybean, they're very important in the overall US agriculture because US is the top producer and exporter of corn and the second biggest soybean producer and exporter in the world. And these two crops are not only important to the agriculture industry, they play a very important role in the overall economy and food security because corn is used for livestock, feed, biofuel and many other industries, and similarly soybean is also a major source of oil and protein. So these two crops, they play a very major role in the overall economy. And this is why the yield prediction of these crops before the harvest, it is very important because it can help with food security monitoring, the market planning for these grains, and then some risk assessment specifically on the large scale. So usually crop yield estimates, the United States Department of Agriculture, they provide the state level corn and soybean yield estimates on a monthly scale, but they're on a state level, and they usually provide these statistics during the crop growing season. And then the USDA publishes county level yield statistics each year, but these crop yield statistics are published in February the next year, like for each year. So there are some limitations associated with these data sets. The first thing is the state level yields, they are not very good to do some county level or small scale analysis. And for county level yield statistics, because these county level yield statistics are provided in February the next year, it makes them very limited to be used for analysis before the harvest. And the second thing is these county level yield statistics, they're based on field surveys. So it's very hard to collect this data. It's labor intensive and very time consuming. This is why there is a need to do some yield predictions before the harvest. So moving on to remote sensing and machine learning and how they are used. So remote sensing data such as surface reflectance, vegetation indices, climate data, and sometimes they're combined with the soil data. They're used as input variables with a combination of some machine learning models to do the crop yield. So usually these variables are used as input predictors, and a relationship is established between these the value of these variables and the historic crop yield to make these predictions possible. So some classical machine learning models, they include partial least square regression, random forest regression, support vector regression, and some other models. And there are some deep learning models that have been used, such as DNN, CNN, and RNN, and many other models for previously for yield prediction. So this is the overall framework of this dissertation. On left side, the existing yield prediction research is shown, like how typically the remote sensing data, some data pre-processing and model fitting works. And then there are some limitations related to those studies. And finally, on the right side, we show the focus of this dissertation in each chapter, along with the topic, like how they address these limitations. So the study area of this research is the US Midwest, which contains the 12 US Midwestern states in this region. And this region is very important for corn and soybean because this is a majority of corn and soybean in the US. It is produced in this region. So this is so chapter 2. It addressed the first set of limitations, that is the issue of spatial non-stationarity and feature selection, and how we deal with that using geographically weighted machine learning models. So a limitation with the global model is usually the relationship between the dependent variables, and the independent variables are usually considered to assume to be spatially stationary. But on a large scale, that is usually not the case, because on a large scale, these relationships are not spatially stationary, and the dependent variables and independent variables, the relationship varies with change in the region. And this can be due to natural environments and human habits, climatic characteristics, and many other details. So the question here is how to develop models that can capture spatial heterogeneity very effectively in the crop yield predictions and the underlying factors that affect them. This brings us to a solution, that is geographically weighted models, which can address the spatial heterogeneity and take the locations data directly. Before that, I would like to give some details about the random forest model. So random forest model is a machine learning model that consists of multiple decision trees, and each decision tree provides an output, and the final output in the random forest is in case of regression, the final output is the average of all these trees, and it creates the final output. But regression model, random forest model is a global model, which means there is not a separate set of model for each set of, like for each subset of for the whole study area. A single set of coefficients are fitted to do the final predictions. So the limitation with random forest model is, since a single model is fitted for the whole study area, it cannot capture the local characteristics. On the other hand, geographically weighted random forest model, it's a local model, and a local model means a separate set of coefficients are fitted for each subset of the region based on some user-defined parameters such as the number of neighbors or distance. And it resolves the issue of spatial heterogeneity because a separate model for each region is fit based on some user-defined variables. So the proposed model, it increases the power of the classical random forest model by incorporating the spatial component directly, and it can process the spatial locations directly in form of coordinates. And the second thing is, when it processes the spatial location directly, it asks the user for an additional parameter, that is either the number of neighbors or a distance, on after which a separate model is trained in the study area. And this model addresses the spatial heterogeneity and also reduces the spatial autocorrelation of errors, which ultimately means that the model is addressing the spatial heterogeneity very effectively. So in comparison to that model, we use some baseline classical machine learning models. Here's the data set that was used for chapter 2. I used satellite-derived normalized difference vegetation index and enhanced vegetation index that was derived from MODIS. Then gross primary production data, it was also derived from MODIS. Some climatic factors such as precipitation, mean, maximum, and minimum temperature, minimum and maximum vapor pressure deficit, and then mean dew point temperature. In soil variable, I extracted these following variables from this Sergo database, which is available on soil database. And these variables were used in this study because they have been used very frequently in previous crop yield prediction research. So the data pre-processing for this study, initially all the data sets that were filtered using the CDL, which is cropland data layer. So all the remote sensing data was filtered through this data set to only retain those pixels which belongs to the specific crop that we were focusing on. So in this case, it was corn. So all the non-corn pixels, they were eliminated, and the other pixels were retained for this study. Then the data was temporally aggregated. The reason for temporal aggregation is all these data sets has different temporal resolution or temporal frequency. So all the data sets were temporally aggregated to a 16-day interval mean so that the analysis can be made on a consistent data set. And the reason to use the 16-day interval is because the vegetation indices, they are available on a 16-day interval, and the other variables, they are available on a on a higher temporal frequency. So to meet all of them, to combine all of them consistently, we did a 16-day interval. And then spatial aggregation, since the data set by the US Department of Agriculture that is provided on a county scale, all these variables, they were aggregated to the county scale and then further combined with the yield data to make a consistent data set for training machine learning models. So for this study, we used the data sets from 2006 to 2020. The data was split into training and testing set, where 70% of the data was used for training the machine learning models, and the rest of 30% data was used to evaluate the performance of all those models. In comparison to geographically weighted random forest model, we use 5 classical machine learning models to compare its performance with those geographically weighted model and see how the performance of that model is as compared to these baseline models. So here are some results from this data set. On this one, we can see the performance of different machine learning models. Here we are looking at the performance of different feature sets. So in this row, we are showing when all the below features are combined into a machine learning model in the first row, and the rest one is vegetation indices, GPP, climate, and soil separately. So if we see the performance of machine learning models, the geographically weighted random forest model, it outperforms all other models when corn yield is predicted in the study area. And there is a very considerable amount of difference in the overall results. But when we see in terms of variable, when all the features are combined, they produce better results, which means if we have more data, the machine learning models can perform better as compared to a subset of data such as these ones. Here is the details of maps of different machine learning models. So from left to right, we're looking at the machine learning models results, and from top to down, we're looking at the results of each of these features. So the first is showing all the features combined, then vegetation indices, GPP data, climate, and then soil variables. And this is the predicted yield using all those models in this data set. So to conclude, in the chapter 2, geographically weighted random forest regression model was used to predict county level corn yield. And geographically weighted random forest model, it outperformed all other machine learning models when it was predicting the county level corn yield. So all the features combined, they produce better results as compared to a subset of features. And then it has the capability to address the spatial heterogeneity. Based on the Moran's-I value, the geographically weighted random forest model, it produced the lowest Moran's-I value, meaning the residuals of the models has less spatial autocorrelation, which means the model is addressing the spatial heterogeneity across the study area in yield prediction. So moving on to chapter 3, which is...
Can I just ask a question to verify for this part? So, you did a kind of aggregation, temporal aggregation for 16 days, and then also did a special aggregation at the county level. My question, when you calibrating this type of model, what's your sample? So basically, if you do that, each county you have a kind of the data records. In terms of spatially, is one of the data records. And then temporarily, if you have 16 days, that's a lot of records there. So I'm not sure for that model, you calibrate for each county independently, or you combine all the county together. And then if you do that, given you have 16 days, I'm not sure. So 16 days, that means you for the entire year, you have every 16 day, or you eventually only select a portion of the time. And the other thing, I guess, you mentioned for the county, what you have your Y for that's in a crop year. They have a kind of the monthly published data, but also have some next year February published data. That means only yearly data. So I just a little bit confused. For your sampling in terms of your time duration, in terms of your sample, how you did this. So that model, your results, you showed that one, that shows in the sample region so many counties results or one county result. just a little confused for that.
Yeah,
part.
sure. Thank you for the question. So actually we had all the variables. So for each variables, if I go back here,
So that models for kind of entire region, so many counties, or you did it for each individual county?
yes, so the satellite data and all these variables, their data was only selected from the crop growing season from April to November. And during that time, all the vegetation indices and all the data sets, they were combined to a 16-day temporal visit. So approximately for each variable, we got 12 time series in the whole growing season.
Okay.
For vegetation indices, for GPP, like for example, in climate, the precipitation has 12 time series in the whole growing season from April.
So that's for 1 year you have that right?
Yes, and for every year,
For
12
each
more.
county?
Yes.
And then so when you do this model, how many years of data you using? Also
It's-
1 year or just how many years?
All the data from 2006 to 2020,
Okay.
and the 70% of the data was used to train the model, and the rest of the 30% was used to do the final prediction. I'll end the slideshow here and quickly show one slide here, which relates to here. This is the typical corn and soybean growing season in the US corn belt. So we select the data sets from these regions and only filter the data from these ones, and then remove the rest of the data to do the predictions.
So how many countries in the total you used for your model calculation?
Approximately 900 counties and then 15 years of data. So the total number of samples were somewhere between 13 to 15,000.
Okay. So that's something I just want to know. So how you did this.
So the second in chapter 3, using gross primary production data and transfer learning for crop yield prediction, we addressed there is an issue of model transferability and vegetation indices will be discussed, and that issue was we tried to resolve that issue using deep transfer learning model and gross primary production data for county level corn and soybean yield prediction. So a challenge with these machine learning models or deep learning models is a lot of times vegetation indices are used. And there is one limitation associated with vegetation indices is when the model is trained for one region or for one time, in the next region or in another crop growing season, these models needs to be reassessed because a lot of time they are not usable in different regions or for different crops. So the issue with the model is also very same. They are very specific to the crop type or the region for which they are trained, and when we try to use them, a lot of time they do not perform better for different crop or different region. The issue of domain shift, because when a model trained in one region is used in another region or for a different crop, there is the issue of domain shift where the data distribution is different and the model doesn't perform very well in those regions. And then another issue is in some of the countries, very good crown data or very good target data is not available in a high amount. So these models sometimes need to be transferred from one region to another to see the performance in the regions where less data is available. So the question that arises from these issues is how to improve crop yield prediction by making the models transferable from one crop to another and then one location to another, and see how effective they are. So the solution, how to extract transferable information. Using transfer learning, we can extract information that is used to train one task, and that information can be retained and reused to learn a very relevant another task. So this is how transfer learning works and how to use that information to do the prediction to transfer model from one crop to another and then one location to another. And in data, MODIS GPP product is it's a data set that combines the MODIS surface reflectance data with some metrological inputs. So it's made the MODIS GPP data, and these GPP estimates has been used very frequently in crop monitoring research and can be used for crop yield prediction research more effectively as compared to the vegetation indices. So the data used for this study is MODIS primary projection data, and this data was derived from MODIS. It has a 250-meter resolution with 8-day temporal visits. So in this study, since we have only one variable, that is GPP, and it has an 8-day temporal visit, the crop growing season, we have total 30 time series of GPP data in the whole growing season for one sample. So we are using that time series to predict county level corn and soybean yield in the US Corn Belt. This is the proposed solution of transfer learning. So the diagram on the right side, it shows how the transfer learning works. A deep learning model is trained for one task that is usually called a source task or a source model. There are many different ways of doing transfer learning, but one way is to freeze some of the layer of the transfer learning model and then reassign or retrain the last few or several layers to do the fine tuning. This is called fine tuning, and the final in this kind of transfer learning, only the final few layers they needs to be retrained. So it is just not only it not only improves the crop yield or the prediction results, it also reduces the time that is needed to train these models. So transfer learning can be used to transfer knowledge from one crop to another and then one location to another, and we have done this in this research. So the objectives of this study is to compare the performance of 3 deep learning models, that is deep neural networks, convolutional neural networks, and then gated recurrent units. These are 3 deep learning models for crop yield estimation using GPP data. And the second objective was to evaluate the performance of 2 different types of transfer learning in county level corn and soybean yield predictions. So again, data from 2006 to 2020 was used, and the data was split into training and testing, where 70% of the data was used for training the models, and the rest of the 30% was used to evaluate the performance of the machine learning models. Here we used 3 deep learning models, there is deep neural networks, convolutional neural networks, and gated recurrent units for comparing the performance of these 3 models to estimate county level corn and soybean yield. This map is showing the classification. We also use the deep transfer learning from crop type and location based, and in the location based transfer learning we use this data set. This is the classification of US Corn Belt by the Environmental Protection Agency into 2 climatic zones. This zone, the one in green, it is named as Great Plains, and the one in red is Eastern Temperate Forest. And these are 2 different climatic zones based on the climatic characteristics of these 2 zones. So we did the spatial transfer learning experiment from this region to that one and from that one to this one to see how the deep learning models, when they're transferred from one climatic region with one kind of characteristics to another climatic region with a different kinds of characteristics, to see how they works. So two types of transfer learning experiments as mentioned, corn to soybean and soybean to corn. And in spatial transfer we did from Great Plains to extreme temperate forest, and then we did from Eastern Temperate Forest to Great Plains. So these are the two climatic zones which were used to do the transfer learning, the spatial transfer learning. So here are some results about the comparisons of the deep learning model for corn and soybean, the DNN, CNN, and GRU results. And we can clearly see that the 1D CNN model is outperforming the rest of the models, that is the DNN and GRU, for both corn and soybean yield prediction. And another observation that we noted in this study is the soybean yield prediction, its performance, it was consistently lower than that of the corn. And it is reported in literature that the GPP estimation for soybean, they're not as reliable as they are for corn, which could be the reason of these estimation not doing so well. So Here, the results of transfer learning are shown from corn to soybean. Here we did one more thing. We use different number of training samples from 15% to 70% in the target domain to see how, if we have less number of samples available in the target space, and how they would perform. So the first 4 rows, they show the results of transfer learning model with different number of samples used in the target domain. And the last one is a similar DNN model which is not using the transfer learning weights. So the last one, the fourth one and the fifth one, they are exactly same models, but the fourth one is using the transfer learning weights and the last one is not using transfer learning. And we can clearly see that the results of transfer learning, they are much improved as compared to when we do not use the pre-trained weights or the transfer learning. The second results is very similar from soybean to corn. Again, the first 4 rows, they show with different proportion of samples used. For the corn model, that was fine-tuned from the soybean, and the final row, it shows the baseline DNN model without those pre-trained weights, and it shows that the transfer learning, those pre-trained weights, they can improve the results of that model.
Shahid, for your baseline model, that's 70%. Is that exact same as your that's 70%? Because 70% from your total data could be any. But my question is, for that 70, you use for transfer improvements compared with your baseline 70%, exactly same set of training data sets?
Yes, because when we did these data sets, so when we split the 15, 30, 50 and 70% of data, we saved that data as separate files. So these 70% of...
No, because that one, 15 could be part of your 70. Yes. My question is 70 compared to your baseline, because in your writing, your baseline is also trained from 70%. So you have a 30% for validation accurate assessment. So my question is for that 70 compared with your baseline 70, it's the same size of the data sets.
Yes, it's the exact same samples because they were extracted from the data and saved separately so that they do not they do not get reshuffled because that will affect our results. So yes, in this 70% and in the baseline model, those samples were the exact same samples extracted from the original data.
Okay.
So next, for the spatial transfer learning, the first 4, again, there are different proportion of samples from GP. The source model was trained in ETF and then fine-tuned in GP, and then with different number of samples, the results are improving from 15 to 30. So this shows us two things. If the number of samples, if they are increasing, then the results are getting improved. But with the same number of samples and exact the same amount in type of samples, the results are getting improved when we use transfer learning or the pre-trained weights as compared to when we use a baseline model without pre-training. And another improvement that is not in terms of result, the training time for these transfer learning model, it considerably gets improved because the first several layers, they're not getting trained again and they're using the pre-trained weights, and the last few layers are only getting trained, so it's saving a lot of time and computational power.
So do you have your timing? Because that's something we're reading. You're kind of interesting. Want to see how much time you you need reporting your.
No, we did not report the time. I just
approximately.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, approximately. So how much time reduction?
It's approximately. It is using either I would say 1/3 or 1/4 of the time that was required to train the source model, and the fine-tuned model is almost it's getting like 1/4 or 1/3 of the time. But it's just based on my observation. Like I have not noted the exact times from start.
Yeah, but what's the total? That's in terms of if in the total your training needed how many hours, and if you reducing that one. So basically, just want to see if that's a big deal. See if you train that need 1 week, and now you reduce it to 1 day, or your training need 1 day, now you reduce one.
Oh yes, not in terms of these samples. Sorry. So not in terms of these samples because this is like structured data in terms of in rows. But if they were actually images, there would be a considerable time. But if it was taking like 20 minutes to train one of that instance of model, now it is taking 5 or 6 minutes. So it's not like that. And since it's not using like a very some very big computers to train these models, they're not. It's not very considerable amount of time. Yes. Yeah. So this one is from ETF to Great Plains, the first spatial transfer with different number of samples in the target region, and finally the baseline, which is improving with increasing number of samples. And if you compare with the same number of samples, it has better results from the pre-trained weights. So last one from Great Plains to ETF, again with similar number of samples, the results of the deep learning model is improved. But when we increase the number of samples, the results are also getting improved. So both the transfer learning model and the number of samples, they are improving the overall results. So the conclusion of this study, we use GPP data and transfer learning model for county level corn and soybean yield prediction. And the prediction accuracy of all the machine learning deep learning models was good, was reasonable, but 1D CNN model, it outperformed the other machine learning models for both corn and soybean yield prediction. Again, I would like to mention the soybean yield prediction performance. It was consistently low with all the models, and that could be the reason that the GPP estimations, it is previously reported that the GPP estimations, they are not as reliable for soybean as they are for corn. The 1D CNN model, it outperformed the DNN and GRU model, and two types of transfer learning experiments. There is crop type transfer learning and location-based transfer learning. Those two experiments were done in this study, and they were successful and showed improved result when using transfer learning.
Yeah, another question before you move on. So yeah, because this part is kind of very interesting. So for this portion compared with your first the geographic video, so you change the input. Right? So basically, because for your first the paper, you have less input requirements. So, but for this one, it's only use one single input variable.
Yeah.
But when you're reading your written version, and then what you input basically is the kind of time series for your, it's called a GPP one.
Yes.
Yeah. So again, just kind of curious, for your this time series, because first one you made clear, okay, 16 days, blah blah. But for this, exactly what kind of time series you use, and then for your entire duration, especially for your prediction, because I assume your prediction will be yearly based, right? Your outputs, basically you want to get every years, but your input, in terms of time, that's a lot of stuff there.
Yes.
So for this second portion, say, what exactly your input you have? Say you're running, that's the entire year of data in terms of some kind of time interval, or say because you have to run it, like giving you multiple years prediction. So it's just it kind of a little bit confused, because you have either use a 1D CNN or using GRU, but you have to process your data sequentially. So how does it?
So for this one, the GPP data, because it is available on a 8-day as an 8-day composite, so we did the same.
That's availability, but how you? Yeah.
We directly use those 8 days composite for the whole crop growing season, and we used a total of 30 time series for each county. So each year, for example, 2006, from start of the season to the end of the season, we have 30 time series of GPP, starting from April till November, and then it has a value of crop yield for that county. So for each county, we have 30 time series of GPP. Their input, they're used as an input, as a single input, but in machine learning mode, in the deep learning mode, they're used like as a 30 inputs because it's a time series. So the 30 time series were used as an input to the deep learning models such as 1D CNN.
Yeah, but the 30, you use because you have to do, say your, 1D, CNN or whatever. That's 30, it's supposed to be more like a time series. After you use them more like a vector, right? So that's basically, you have this kind of a vector, because otherwise, if you do your output, suppose also giving something like 30 number. But I assume you're not do prediction your years is not corresponding to your input, right?
Yes, the output is used as a single, because in each of the models, the last output we use as a single output as one
year.
One
year,
variable.
Year.
Yes. Yeah.
So your input is 30 for this year, 30 for this year, give
yes, for every
sequence.
year. And we have all these variables for different county, but we are using the year as an identifier. We are not using the year as a variable, but we are organizing our data in terms of county and then year, county and year. And every year, each county has like 30 time series of that GPP. So the third set of limitation that is related to machine learning model deployment. And we aim to address that using machine learning model deployment for crop yield prediction. So currently a major issue with all these machine learning models that are being used in research are they're used for some research purposes, but they're rarely deployed online. In many other fields, these models are deployed, but specifically or particularly in agriculture, the machine learning models that are trained for research, they are very rarely deployed online, and this limits their usage by other users. So when machine learning models are trained, it's very beneficial to provide them to the community or stakeholders so that they can use these models, they can evaluate its effectiveness, or they can use the results from these machine learning models for some of their decision making. So the question that arises here is how to make the model publicly available for use. So the solution, we can train machine learning models. They can be deployed online using some system, and WebJS application that delivers machine learning models and all the data sets over web can be used, can be deployed and can be used. And these models can be made available to all those stakeholders. They can evaluate the effectiveness of these models and use them for their decision-making purposes. So the objective of this study is to design and develop a WebGIS application that uses big remote sensing data and machine learning models to estimate county level corn and soybean yield. This kind of application can be used for any region or any number of crops, but we focused on corn and soybean yield in the US Corn Belt to see how its effectiveness is. Again, any number of variables or any data set can be used, but initially we use the satellite data. We just use NDVI and EVI derived from MODIS, which has a 250 meter resolution. And in this case, we aggregated the data to a monthly scale so that a consistent data set can be generated and can be easily used in an online system in a WebGIS application. The deep learning models that we used in this study, we used a dual stream deep neural network. So the dual stream model, it works in such a way that each stream of the model, it processes those data sets separately. So the DNN model, it has two streams. One stream is for processing the NDVI data, and the other stream is to process the EVI data. And once they process somehow their data set, the outputs are combined and merged together to do the final prediction. And similar for convolutional neural networks, so we use these two models. But in this application, we added one extra functionality, that is custom models. So the custom models is if the user knows what kind of data we are using and what kind of time series of data we are using, they can train their own models using their own systems, and they can upload their own model to our system, and they can do the comparisons or see the effectiveness of how their model is, if it's working better than those, or if there is anything that needs to be improved. So these are the architectures, not too much in details. One stream is processing the NDVI data, the other stream is processing the EVI data, and then doing the final prediction. This one is for the CNN, and this one is for the DNN architecture. And here the workflow of the system is displayed. So the workflow of the system, it works in such a way that user input is taken by the system, and then the relevant data set from the database, it's retrieved, and then machine learning models are used to predict the crop yield based on the user selection like year, area, and the machine learning models, and the final results are displayed to the user in type of some tables, some charts, and then the user is also given the option if they would like to export the results to a CSV file, Excel, or a shape file. So here I would like to explain the overall system design of this study. The first module is data processing module, in which we retrieve all these remote sensing data set, do the temporal filtering and spatial filtering, and then clean all the data and combine with the yield data, and then send it to the database management system. So the database management system was designed in PostGIS, which is a special extension of PostGIS, and then we use the Django ORM, which is the Django Objects Relational Mapper that facilitate the communication between the database and the GIS application. The third and most important component of the system is web server. What the web server do is it deploys the machine learning models, it takes and processes the user input, it do select the model and data from the database, and it do the yield predictions. So all the backend functionality is done by the web server, and it was developed in Django and Django REST framework. Then machine learning models, deep learning models, it's an external component. We train and evaluate the deep learning models. These TensorFlow and Keras, these technologies were used, and the machine learning model is trained and evaluated and then exported and used in this module to do the final crop yield predictions. And finally, the client side. So the client side is responsible for taking all the user input, displaying everything to the user in final form, maps and everything. So this is the overall system design with all these components. And in here, we have the results of these two models. Since we use monthly data sets, the results are different for both DNN and CNN model, and different architecture was used. But for corn, the DNN model performs better, while for soybean, the GSCNN model, it produced better results using these monthly vegetation indices such as NGVI and EVI. We have some more results here. We also tested the performance of these machine learning models, deep learning models in the data set with the similar architecture, but in different months. So how early can we do these predictions before the harvest? We assess the performance in May, July, and September. This is still like a month and a half or something from the harvest season. So we can see that the DNN model, the results is getting improved as the time passes, as more data is available. But if we see the results of CNN, it is already getting good results even in the early season, which means the CNN model is performing better with even less number of data as compared to the DNN model. Sorry, this is just the crop growing season of corn and soybean. So here I would like to show a small video of how the system works and how it gets the input from the user and how it processes that. So this is our system. The very first step is model upload. So we have trained this model. We have trained these models in these HDF files. They're showing different trained models which were exported to HDF format. So we can see that this is a CNN model trained with NGVI and EVI, and we are as a user we are uploading that model to the system. So after uploading the model, we select the model and then give the model name, some description, and then the crop type for which the model was trained. And before uploading the model, we are going to check our database. So our database has currently 3 models, which has different model name, description, the crop type, and the path where the model is saved. So when we upload this model to the system, select the crop and all those details, and then submit it. Now we have 4 models in our system. The model was successfully uploaded to the system and is shown in the database. The next step is, after the model upload, is to use the model to do yield prediction. So here the user can select an year, can select a crop, select the state, and then select the model. So we have 2 inbuilt models in the system, as we shown in the methodology. They are provided in the system, but the users can also always upload their custom models. But we need to make sure that those models are trained with the same architecture, with the same data and same architecture. And once we submit, it does some processing on backend. It selects the model, select the data, do the predictions.
Shahid, for your model that you do, the model for trading also is online or offline, or you just get your model, you just deploy your trained results. How you did it? Looks like you can do your model development online, or you did the model offline and then just load in, deploy your trained results online. So
it is possible to do some machine learning model training online, but with this system we are training the models on separately externally, and that's exporting the output.
That's offline, and then
yes.
you just deploy
the
trained model to this system.
Yes.
Okay.
So once we submit the model, the results are displayed. It shows the results in this table form. Also some figure like a scatter plot and some other details of related. So we can see the results on map, and this is the map which shows us the results of each county and that year in terms of predicted and actual results and some more details. We can download the results as Excel file, and when we click on that, the Excel file is downloaded, and we can inspect that file for all those results, such as county, year, the crop. Currently we are looking at the predicted and actual yield by that specific model. And then those results can also be exported as a shapefile if you want to do some GIS analysis on those data sets. So the system has the capability to export the results in form of a shapefile. And then of course we can visualize these tabular results and some scatter plot within the system, which is generated on the fly for these crop yield predictions. So currently this is how the overall system looks. And then the conclusions of this study. So a WebGIS application was developed that can host machine learning models, and those models can be the models that are within the system. The users can use those models or can upload their own custom models trained with a similar architecture to the system. And then the system can predict county level corn and soybean yield, but can be extended to other crops in other region, and then other predictors, because currently for simplicity we are just using vegetation indices, but other data set can be used, and this system can be expanded. And then display and export the results. The model can currently do that. We can display the results in tabular form, in scatter plot, and then we can export the Excel file in shape files within the system. But there's still some limitation with this system. So on-demand data processing and preparing for machine learning models, this is something that can be extended in future, so that the data, we are currently hosting all the data, the historical data within the system, but some functionality can be developed to process the data on the go and use with the machine learning models. And currently the system only works with vegetation indices, but other parameters, it can be extended to other parameters, and the machine learning models can also be extended to those parameters to host in this system. And then analytics and long-term monitoring, this is very important when a machine learning model is being used for long-term, because when new data is being introduced, this model drift can occur with new distribution of data. So in long term, these machine learning models can be monitored and updated within the system. Finally, chapter 5, the conclusion of this dissertation. In this dissertation, the county level crop yield prediction was tried to improve using three topics. The first one was geographically weighted machine learning, which was used successfully, and different feature sets were used to see how effective they are. In the other chapter, we use GPP data and transfer learning for crop yield prediction. For two crops it was used, and 3 deep learning models were used, and 2 types of deep transfer learning were used in this study. Finally, in the last topic, the model deployment using WebGIS application was demonstrated, and the machine learning model is able to, the WebGIS application is able to deploy these models, and they can be used for crop yield predictions. And then some limitations. The very first limitation that this dissertation has is the data. It is always aggregated to county scale, so a lot of information in this data set, it is lost. Since the crop yield data is available on county scale, this is one of the limitations, but new methods they are available that can be used to use all the data and do not use the data aggregation, and they can be used to improve this. Low resolution remote sensing data, currently we are using MORIS, but other data sets such as Landsat or Sentinel or other high resolution data sets can be used to improve these predictions. Of course, the data processing and the computational cost, that would be more as compared to these data sets, but they can be used. And then the currently used methods, there are still more advanced methods available, and because the machine learning and deep learning community, it's developing with very fast pace, and new models are available, so they can be used to improve the performance of these models. Finally, explainable AI. So the current crop yield prediction models, they are mostly working as a black box model, which means that they do not give us any explanation or interpretation of how those features are affecting the final predictions, or how some specific features are affecting differently and others are. So explainable AI, which is developing very fast, can be used to see how crop yield predictions are done by these variables, and how different variables affects the final yield differently. This is the progress of my dissertation. The first 2 chapters, chapter 2 was published in remote sensing, chapter 3 was published last year in International Journal of Applied Earth Observation and Geoinformation, and the last chapter, it's in preparation, and we plan to submit it to Computers and Electronics in Agriculture this month. Thank you for coming and listening to this presentation. I'll take any questions.